Push it. Password, because I don't use Microsoft ever, because you suck. X, Y, Y. We just sent a code. Isn't that sweet of you? You've only been causing this problem. Microsoft. Here is your code. Okay.
So many answers we may never know. Too many questions, get on with the show. No time for the chorus, only this verse. It's Kubrick's Universe.
Open the podcast doors, Hal.
It's Kubrick's Universe, the Stanley Kubrick Podcast.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome back once again to the show we love to bring you, Kubrick's Universe. Okay, question. What do Blade Runner, The Magnificent Ambersons, Cinema Paradiso, and Brazil have in common? Answer: they've all been re-edited after their initial theatrical releases. Okay, follow me here. Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut was originally released in the U.S. on July 16th, 1999. Lamentably, the maestro's final film was more or less received by audiences and critics alike as somewhat disappointing. There was a lingering sense that, after a 12-year absence of having a new Stanley Kubrick film in theaters, fans were, for better or worse, forced to accept that Eyes Wide Shut would indeed be his swan song. Irrespective of all we do or do not know conclusively, there does still seem to be an ongoing internet query over whether the cut of Eyes Wide Shut, which Kubrick submitted to Warner Brothers just days before his passing, would have indeed been the final cut he actually chose. The film was still roughly 4 months away from release after all. So let's look back. In 1968, Kubrick did remove about 20 minutes of film from 2001: A Space Odyssey, and he did so after its premiere screenings, saying, "It does take a few runnings to decide finally how long things should be, especially scenes which do not have narrative advancement as their guideline." Then in 1980, he removed what was the originally intended final scene of The Shining, again after the film's initial U.S. release, and then a further 24 minutes for what is still referred to this day as the European cut of the movie. So it's not hard to imagine that Kubrick might in fact have implemented some changes to Eyes Wide Shut during the 4-month period between his untimely passing and the release of the film, had he lived. Now, of course, no one will ever really know, but a young actor and filmmaker from Texas actually went and made his own passion project out of curiosity and a desire to see about the possibilities of making some cuts of his own to Eyes Wide Shut. His name is Marshall Allman, and before we get ahead of ourselves and or prejudge, I'd like to share this quote from him, as it seems to be a worthy crucible. Quote, "I am not trying to do what Kubrick would have done, but instead seeing what changes were even possible without losing the essence of the film," end quote. His unauthorized edit runs at 120 minutes, having trimmed 40 minutes from the officially released version. And Marshall has made it available for anyone to watch at eyeswidecut.com. And as he explains on his website, quote, "It was in the spirit of never saying no to an idea that I decided to make the edit to Eyes Wide Shut, not only as an homage to my favorite filmmaker, but also as a personal challenge to myself as an editor and a storyteller," end quote. All good. Sounds cool, right? Anyway, here we go. We spoke with Marshall Allman in July 2018. Hey Marshall, how are you, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, brother. I want to get right into some questions, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, cool. So you've been acting now for several years. Just give our listeners a bit of a background on your journey as an actor so far.
Yeah, I arrived at acting in a roundabout kind of way. I grew up actually wanting to be a soccer player or a football player for you, Stephen. That was my dream. That was my pursuit. That was my passion. Equally passionate though, I was pursuing art. So visual arts, just painting, drawing, um, whatever medium I could get my hands on, I would dive in. Well, my soccer career hit a dead end at an inopportune time, and I wound up at a talent search for acting, which was really weird because I'd never acted before. But they had us reading monologues from a breakfast club, which I had watched nearly every weekend since I was like 8 or 9 on television. So I knew the monologue by rote and had a great response and had this opportunity to move to LA with a manager. And I thought, well, if I can't be a soccer player, then I'll be an artist. And if I'm going to be an artist, that means I need to move to New York or LA, preferably New York. Obviously, it's a more esteemed place to be from if you're an artist. But I knew I was going to be poor. And so I thought, well, hey, maybe I can make money doing acting and continue my art and pursue my art so I won't be the poor starving artist, as it were.
Right, right.
Right. Which is a brilliant idea, clearly thought up by an 18-year-old. And so I moved to LA to pursue acting to support my art career. And when I got to LA and started taking acting classes and diving into the art of acting, I realized how amazing it was that fortuitously it was this craft that combined art and physicality. So the physicality of sports that I loved and the adrenaline rush of sports that I loved, I could now do in acting and still combine it as an art. So I became really obsessed. The basic idea was, why paint when I could be the painting? And that was the essential idea. So yeah, I hit the ground running and just started training, and I just became completely obsessed. And at the same time, I became completely obsessed with film. And so yeah, that was where my acting career started, and I've been very fortunate to actually live as an actor for all this time. And I haven't since painted or drawn or done any of that because I became so obsessed with filmmaking in my spare time.
Well, as I've said previously on the show, it's a good philosophy to kind of go where the river takes you.
That seems to be what happened with me.
The big question, of course, we have to ask, is that you apparently auditioned for Mr. Tarantino recently for a part in his upcoming film. I believe it's to play Charlie Manson. Is that correct?
I cannot confirm or deny.
Ooh,
That's actually true. I've actually signed my name away on that one.
wow, very cool. Okay, well, there you have it, listeners, a non-exclusive.
I mean, it wouldn't take a long time to figure out whether I got the part or not, or whether I auditioned at all.
Right.
We'll see.
Well, forgive me for having asked, but I thought it would be okay to do so, at least, and you couldn't say anything or nothing, which you did. So, but now you've also written and directed a bunch of your own projects in addition to your acting career. You want to tell our listeners a bit about that?
Yeah, well, funny enough that actually one of my projects is the reason why I stumbled onto this whole Eyes Wide Cut project to begin with. I created a short film series called Marriage in Short, and it's a 5-part series on the comedy of matrimony. So the whole idea of marriage as this contained farce that we all willingly play and get wrapped up in and become these other people, and some of us our marriages survive and some of them don't. But it proved to me something I'm very passionate about. I'm married 12 years, and I actually love marriage, warts and all. So I was doing research on other films that had existed about marriage, which of course led me to Eyes Wide Shut. I rewatched it, got really into it, started researching, as you do with a Kubrick film, researching all the milieu surrounding the film. And that's when I stumbled on this article that proposed that maybe Kubrick wasn't finished with Eyes Wide Shut, that it wasn't the film that he wanted us to see. And that struck such a chord in me that I immediately rewatched the film and found absolutely, I was like, I was compelled. I was like, I literally, I think I slept like 6 hours in over 3 days, just maniacally editing the film. It was really intense. It was really, really intense, but I became instantly obsessed. It was like this mystery and this idea and I got to apply all my interpretation of the film and my instinct for how the movie went. It was an amazing experience for me personally. And when I was finished, I was so surprised at how well it came together. I couldn't believe, because I didn't have any of the original materials. I didn't have the tracks. I didn't have outtakes. I didn't have any of the other things. So for it to come together as well as it did, I couldn't believe it. It felt like it wanted to be edited, to be honest with you, which made me feel weird and really crazy. And so I tried to share it with a few people. And of course, I was asking for like 5 hours of their time of course, they'd have to rewatch Eyes Wide Shut and then watch my version, or the inverse actually works really well. And no one did, until like 9 months later. One of my friends that I asked said, "Hey, I rewatched Eyes Wide Shut. I'm ready to watch your version." And that compelled me to go back and go, "Hey, wow, I edited all this whole thing, and was it any good? Is it what I thought it was? Is it worth its salt?" Because I was so nervous now that he was really ready to watch it, and I had all this time to kind of separate myself from it. And that's when I dove back in and started to research everything about the creation of the film, the novella that it's based on, and really start to analyze what I had done in those 72 hours in London, actually. And that's when I started to kind of go, okay, is this viable? Does this work, or was I just dreaming?
Wow. That's okay. Yeah. But that must have been a strangely satisfying feeling, because as a Kubrick fan, you're kind of experimenting, in the maestro's domain, the master himself.
Yes.
And then, I could completely, it's not something I would think to undertake, just because I would find the prospect of getting it right too daunting, but that's just me. And you obviously had something in an inner voice telling you to proceed, and it's good that you did, man. But
Yeah, that
line,
was
because if you're happy with it, that's why I say that it's good that you did. If the bottom line is you satisfied yourself as an artist,
I did, and that was kind of the whole crux of the thing. Is I just had this instinct, and I didn't do it for anyone to see it. Actually, the only reason why it's public is kind of a roundabout event. So I originally cut it just for myself, and then I sat on it. It didn't, from the time that I cut it to the time that I released it publicly, it was about a year. And there was good reason for that, because I was terrified on all fronts. Like, once I'd done it, the thought of it being seen and released publicly was terrifying to me, because I would have to answer for what I'd done. And editing, if you've ever edited before, it is not a intellectual exercise, and it's not only an emotional exercise. It's a full body instinctual driven thing that it's consuming. And yes, it involves your intellect, and yes, it involves your emotions, but an editor without a vision or an inspiration or an instinct is dead in the water. It just becomes like the hands and feet of somebody else's vision, you know? And honestly, that's the worst place to be as an editor, is just feeling like you're just sweeping the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen and I have talked about that. He does a lot of video editing, and he's, you know, quite the expert at it from my vantage point. I've edited my own videos, mostly iMovie and mostly short little vignettes I do for the bemusement of my friends and myself. But, I get it completely what you described about it being a full body thing. And it is entirely intuition driven. It can be like anything else where you can think your way through the process when the solution is to feel your way.
Right, exactly. And then, though there was the initial 72-hour cut that I did, and then once it was sort of determined that it was going to be released publicly, that's when I went back and was like, okay, became I wouldn't say a scholar on it, because I'm definitely not a scholar, but a major enthusiast. I don't know. I became obsessed with finding out if these cuts do hold water, or if they are viable. When you consider Kubrick as an artist, Kubrick, his films, and the creation of Eyes Wide Shut, which has been really cool to watch Eyes Wide Shut become more popular since I started this project.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has. I want to touch upon that, but I want to ask, when did you first see Eyes Wide Shut? Do you remember what year, how old you were, whatever?
Yeah, it came out in 99, and I was a freshman in high school then, so I had heard of it. Obviously, it was a sensation. It was everywhere. But I didn't see it until actually I moved to LA 4 years later to be an actor, and I used to frequent Amoeba. Amoeba is a record shop in LA, and that's when I became obsessed with film, and I amassed a huge DVD collection, and obviously got my Kubrick collection. And I saw Eyes Wide Shut the first time, and the first time I saw it, it just struck me as this, like, I don't know. Honestly, it was a mystery to me. It was like a dream. And my recollection of it was like a dream, but of all the Kubrick films, I related to it the most. And I found it the most personable one. And then cut to later getting married at a young age and then revisiting it. I was like, yes, this is, and it is my favorite Kubrick film. Though it's not the first one I saw. The first one I saw was Dr. Strangelove.
I was going to ask, what was the first Kubrick film you saw? How old were you when you saw Strangelove?
Gosh, I was in middle school, and we used to, me and my buddy, we used to walk from his house to Blockbuster and just like scour it. And a friend of ours, she came from a more educated family, I guess, or a scholarly family. Her father is a famous novelist, and so she had talked about Dr. Strangelove with such reverence. You know, you sort of encounter the reputation of Kubrick's films before you, unless of course you saw it in theaters. But even then, I think it's true that you encounter sort of the surrounding buzz around a Kubrick film before you actually watch it. Very few people stumble on a Kubrick film and go, "What is this? I have no idea what it's about." And so it was very much true for me with Dr. Strangelove, and I remember watching that, and just it opened a whole world for me of what humor could be. And I just couldn't believe it. It just had all the marks of what now I see as a Kubrick film, of like this heightened reality. It was amazing.
It's a good point about this stumbling. It is rare, but the people I've spoken with who had that experience, nonetheless, do have a story to tell. Like they took away, an experience from having stumbled on it. I was having dinner with my Uncle Charlie about 5-6 months ago, and we were talking Kubrick, and he said, my buddy dragged me to see this movie Barry Lyndon because he was saying, oh, it's the guy who made 2001: A Space Odyssey, and he's my favorite director. And my Uncle Charlie told me that when they came out of the theater, that his friend, who was all amped up to see the new Kubrick film, was like, oh, I didn't really like it. It was so slow. It was disappointing. And to this day, it's my Uncle Charlie's favorite Kubrick film. He came out of it, like, couldn't stop thinking about it. And I think he said he went back like 2 or 3 days later to see it again.
Wow. I mean,
so that, he stumbled upon it, and there's, his experience, and the memory stuck with him 43 years later.
Barry Lyndon to me is like a novel on film, and even despite its length and its deliberate pace, I've never once, as an editor, thought, oh, I want to cut into that. Interestingly enough, the voiceover technique he used in that one was going to be in Eyes Wide Shut, actually. If the original, I have the original treatment. I say treatment because Kubrick didn't want it in typical screenplay format. But I think the one I have posted on my website, if you go and look, is a screenplay format of the original treatment, and you can see the voiceover, read the voiceover, which actually it's very, very revealing about everything in the script, which we can get into why they cut that and compared to Dream Story, which is based on, and all that is very interesting.
Well, what is so interesting on the subconscious level to someone watching Barry Lyndon the first time is they might not realize that the voiceover narration is actually predicting things that we kind of know we're going to see, but we don't see them yet. Like the line about the life conspired to leave Barry childless, that happens before Brian Lyndon falls off the horse, and it's throughout the whole story, and it's just a brilliant little turn of the screw on Kubrick's part to insert that into the way that particular story is told visually, and then using that audio trick to kind of like mess with your advanced expectations.
Right, because that was the whole theme of fate, essentially, which obviously Kubrick was very interested in that in the future.
When you first had this idea to re-edit Eyes Wide Shut, you must have been thinking, like, am I crazy to keep having this, the strong desire to attempt this? I mean, what are your recollections when you first set about deciding you had to do this?
Well, one of the things that really hit me when I was studying everything surrounding Eyes Wide Shut was the reception that it received when it first came out. And even now, today, a lot of those criticisms persist, and they're very active. A lot of people openly do not like Eyes Wide Shut. In fact, they're like reviled by it. In fact, my neighbor, I told her about this project a long time ago, and she was like, "Oh, that's the only film I've ever walked out of the theaters on."
Yeah.
And to be fair, like, one of the main criticisms is obviously the pace of it. Then there was like that they thought it was going to be this sexual romp, but it turned out to be this like story of sexual fear. Which creeped them out. And then one of the criticisms that never sat right with me, that I couldn't, like, it's not that I agree with those other criticisms, but I can easily understand them and why somebody would feel that way. But the one that I never understood was criticisms of Tom Cruise's performance. And I would feel so crazy when I would like watch the film, and I'm like, as an actor, I've been acting for 15 years, 15 plus years. And I would watch it and I'm going, there's not a single false moment this guy's having. His performance is incredible. And it got me thinking, because I've had this experience where I gave what I felt when I gave it, and my director felt when I gave it, a very authentic, real performance. And then when reviews came out, it was kind of like, on my performance, and it was really confusing for me. And it actually devastated me. And so I spent a long time trying to figure out, like, why didn't my performance translate? This was early on for me as an actor. And that's when I started studying screenwriting and directing on an even deeper level, because I realized that the way the story was told and the way it was written actually caused the audience to not understand my character or to not track with my character. And that translates to an audience as them thinking, oh, the performance maybe is lacking, because they can't see the mechanisms that go behind a performance that make something great.
Exactly. Which inversely means that you succeeded.
Right. Exactly. And the problem I had with this was that it was, as no matter how good of I had to learn this kind of the hard way. I mean, it wasn't that, I didn't get that panned, but it was, I thought my performance would have been lauded, and it wasn't. It was like there was no mention. And so I kind of learned the hard way of, like, as an actor, I'm only as good as the material I'm performing, and then as good as the filter of the director I am going through. Now, obviously, Stanley is a great filter. So that led me to, what about not necessarily the screenplay, because so much of Eyes Wide Shut was filmed improvisationally or rewritten on set. But it was about the manner in which the story was told, which is very much an editing thing.
Mm.
And so I thought, well, my whole aim for when I re-edited this was I didn't think that the film needed to be cut. I personally think the film's a masterpiece. I don't think it's a perfect film, but I personally think it's a masterpiece.
Mm.
I didn't think it needed to be cut, but I was interested in drawing something out of it. And what I wanted to draw out of it was Tom's performance. I wanted that to be the guiding thing through the whole film.
Yeah.
Because as it's told now, it's one of the criticisms about it was that he went on this whole journey just because his wife had a dream. It's a very thin motivation for an actor to sustain 2 hours and 40 minutes. I mean, it's longer than 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
You know, and this is all about a guy whose wife just told him that she really wanted to leave him for another man, you know.
Right.
And so I realized, like, Tom was tasked with this impossible motivation in a story that deviates so much. And every time the story deviates from that razor thin motivation he has, it tends to lose the audience, and we lose track of why Bill is doing what Bill's doing, and we don't identify with Bill emotionally. So much is said about it being cold, and you're not supposed to like the lead characters or identify with them, but at least you're supposed to understand them.
Right.
And that
was,
and then and that was the guiding thing. That was my initial instinct about this, was, what is Bill thinking and feeling, and how can I reveal that more? How can I keep the audience engaged in exactly what he's thinking and feeling as best as possible? Because obviously we can't know what he's thinking because there's no voiceover. And, you know, Kubrick was not a fan of externalizing by dialogue how characters felt internally. So yeah, that was the initial guiding principle of the whole thing, of, like, how can I draw out Bill's story?
Thank God that Kubrick didn't, go for the VO in that case, because one of my good buddies, he loves David Lynch's Dune, and he knows it's a flawed film, and he's just like, I just grew up watching it again. And, so he loaned it to me, and I remember seeing it in the theater. And then I saw it a few times on home video over the years, and I always tried to give it another chance. And I watched it again, like, nice Blu-ray, transfer just last fall, and there is just so much expository narration with Kyle MacLachlan's, a close-up shot of his eyes, and he's going, the spice.
Well, okay, to play devil's advocate to your point, I mean, yes, absolutely, and Kubrick was absolutely a show don't tell director. But to the point of, I've entertained, like, what would voiceover look like in the film? And then it makes me think of Little Children, which Todd Fields did.
Yeah.
And so it worked so well in that film, and it's a story about a marriage, and honestly, it is very akin to Barry Lyndon. Because I saw Little Children before I saw Barry Lyndon, and I thought, wow, this voiceover is genius. How did he think to do this? And then when I saw Barry Lyndon, I was like, oh, duh. And then when I realized that Todd was in Eyes Wide Shut, I was like, he borrowed that one from the master.
Yeah.
You could, obviously he did, but very interesting that all ties together. But yeah, that was to me, that was the crux, I think, of why Eyes Wide Shut took so long for Kubrick to adapt. Simply because of how difficult it was to externalize this dream world that Arthur Schnitzler had sort of crafted so perfectly, that it was this just beautiful blend of dream and reality, and so much of it was driven by Frida Lynn's, who's translated to Eyes Wide Shut as Bill. Frida Lynn's internal crisis of manhood, and sexuality. Like, how would you translate this to film in a way that would communicate it? Funny enough is, even though I instinctually was like, let me draw out Bill's journey, let me draw out his emotional, physical journey as the guiding light for this edit, when I went back and studied the novella and Frederick Raphael's memoir about writing the film with Kubrick, it really struck me that, like, that much of what I cut actually was kind of closer to the novella. And the things that were in the novella that I cut as well, like certain things that I realized, like, oh, it's because that didn't translate very well because in the film, we don't know what's going on inside of Bill. We never really know what is happening inside of him.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that people love about the film say nothing about Bill.
Then that became, and it unique to your journey, that in fact is what became your approach to deciding, to make Eyes Wide Cut, was to focus on, that's what makes it really fascinating to me, and obviously very unique to you and what you've done. I mean, and the film has, of course, I mean, talk about shelf life. It's grown only exponentially in terms of its popularity. And you were saying that the trials that he went through in making it. Of course, it's got the Guinness Book record. I think it's 400 straight days. And then it came out, and I saw it in the theater when it first came out, and it was very bittersweet for me, because I had waited 12 years since seeing Full Metal Jacket in the theater, for my favorite filmmaker's next movie, and he'd passed away, and I left the theater feeling like, confused, disappointed, kind of angst-ridden. And I was living in Boston at the time, and I just remember walking all over Boston for like hours that night. I'd gone to the theater with friends, and then I think we might have gone for a beer or something, and then we were all going to go home, and I just kept walking, kind of like Bill or something. But I wasn't. Yeah. I wasn't really. It's hard to explain. I wasn't really like needing that time to walk around by myself to kind of decide whether I liked it or not. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And I knew from my previous experiences that I was going to have to see it again. I was going to have to give it more time. Because to be honest with you, I mean, I've seen a number of Tom Cruise performances, and I've studied the craft. I'm a big fan of the craft of acting, and I always like to think anyway that, I can tell when somebody's phoning it in, when something is genuine and authentic. I'm sure you know all about that. It's a whole other conversation we could have.
Right.
and what you're striving for. And a lot of us had frankly seen a number of Tom Cruise performances in other movies that were just, for me, they were underwhelming. And I don't need everybody to be Daniel Day-Lewis, but I know that at the time I saw Eyes Wide Shut, I was kind of prejudiced against not really wanting Cruise to be the lead in what, of course, turned out to be Stanley's last film. But I knew I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I ended up walking around until like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then, of course, you know, the DVD revolution, you know, had already happened in the late 90s. So as soon as it came out on DVD, I got it and I started watching it. I loved it a lot more. And it's obviously only grown exponentially, you know, in the years since. Now, I want to touch upon the fact that 7 years ago, when Stephen Rigg founded the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society, you know, it was a much less discussed Kubrick film, you know, and
Right.
in the 7 years since, you know, he and James Marinaccio and subsequently myself, have, you know, and everyone in the group, frankly, all of our awesome members that are so active and cool, just we've only seen it grow and grow in terms of people wanting to discuss it, sharing, you know, frank opinions about it, and to the point, really, you know, being more open to it. So I think that, you know, everyone should definitely see your cut, should see Eyes Wide Cut. You know, everyone that's in Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society that listens to Kubrick's Universe, if you can hear my voice, please definitely see this, because it's an essential, it's now become kind of an essential part of the discussion as I see it.
Wow. I mean, you touched on something that has been my experience thus far with Eyes Wide Cut, is that, you know, obviously I made it for myself, and then when I released it, it started to reveal itself to me of more of what it was, you know, and one of the things that that I'm most excited about it serving is it's an opportunity to reconsider the film.
Right. Now, I want you to elaborate on the thing you said, I believe, was that when you started out, your aim was to, quote, turn the dream into a fever dream, which I think is
Exactly
awesome. Like, yeah, tell our listeners what you meant by that.
Well, is basically that Kubrick was so obsessed with capturing the dream world of the novella. In fact, when he was when they started out with him and Frederick Raphael, Frederick offered to him. He said, "So, you know, that's the crux of this, right? Is how much of this is going to be a dream, and how much is it's not going to be a dream?" And he said, Frederick said, I tend to think that the whole thing is supposed to be a dream from the novella. And Kubrick said, "Well, we can't make the whole thing a dream." And he's like, "Why not?" And he's like, "Because then if there's no reality, we have no movie." And so
Right.
Frederick was like, "Okay, maybe it'll be a blend." So there was this obsession with making it this dream. And so much of that dream-like tone comes from Bill wandering through the city on this odyssey in what I call the first half of the film. That's like the dream where he arrives at the orgy, and then I think that the dream-like state of the film starts when he arrives at Marianne's house where her father has passed.
Right.
And he leaves it. That's actually kind of where it starts in the novella too, is the dream world starts there too. The first quote, like in the book where it blends dream and reality, is he's leaving her house, and he says he looks back and he can't tell if the people in that house were real or not.
Mm.
And that's where and that's where he starts on this sort of journey into the night, where everything he leaves the responsibilities of his life and being this doctor and a father and a husband, and and this crisis of jealousy starts to blossom inside of him, and he just gets taken away on this journey. And so there was this kind of need to create that dream world, but not knowing exactly. That's where it starts to get interpretive, where it's like, which ones feed the dream world, which ones don't. And that's what I was very interested in finding out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think some of them do and some of them don't. And the whole idea, though, was I realized that some of these story elements, just from a story angle, could just be, they could be gone, and I would still completely understand everything you could intuit from the film,
Right.
with those elements gone. And then the trick was does that ruin the dreamlike state of the film? And so that was the fine line that I was looking to, so that the dream became more focused, because it does have this narrative in it that's a thriller, and it's like a neo-noir thriller.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets obfuscated by this sort of, odyssey of encountering these characters, and then we're finding out, about this, or we're finding out about that, or why did I go there? I don't really know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, like, as a fan of the original film, I like that, and I like getting carried away in the same way that I like getting carried away in 2001, or carried away in Barry Lyndon and get swept up into a world.
Yeah.
So I would never discredit the original and what's there. I love it. But at the same time, because there's this whole slew of people who don't like the film or don't understand the film, me trimming this down into quote unquote fever dream gives them an excuse to come back. Like, that was my hope, is like that we could drum up enough attention for it to make people make a decision on the original. And that's been the beauty of this whole thing, is this version of the film either reinforces why you love the original, or reveals to you what you didn't like about the original. It becomes a litmus test.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfectly stated. That's what I was trying to say before about how, your cut is kind of essential now, because good, bad, or indifferent, it does force, Kubrick fans and people who have an opinion one way or the other about his final film to re-examine it, for their own perspective. In that sense, what you've contributed, like I said, it was trying to say, does make it essential, especially now, to the discussion as it exists in, 21st century media. Because everybody, everybody has to have an opinion. And when you go and do something like this, you're not so much kicking a hornet's nest as you are kind of throwing a hat down in a ring and saying, okay, well, if you don't like this, consider, your own approach or whatever. And because you went and did it. It goes back to the thing about music. And also, I mean, to tie in with music again, like I was listening the way you described how you could have removed all of these scenes, shots, elements, and you wouldn't miss anything. And that's a thing in music too, which is that, somebody once said that, it's not the notes you play, it's the notes you don't play.
Right.
And that's something that's very essential in crafting really good music, I think, is a less is more approach.
I have to be careful about quantitative statements like that, because I love the original so much.
Of course.
I myself, even though I'm biased, and I do like what I did, every time I say anything that could disparage the original, my body like cringes, and I'm like, ugh, no, because I love the original, and that's a paradox that's really hard to communicate to people, is that I both love the original and chopped it up, like it's like the sacrifice of Isaac or something, like biblical terms, like it's like, yeah, he's my son, but I need to sacrifice him, And to put it succinctly, I think that if the film works as a story without the scene,
mm-hmm.
or that part, it begs the question, why is it there? And not even in a negative sense, but that becomes, to me, it becomes a portal to a new way of looking at and trying to understand Kubrick himself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, who was he as an artist and as a filmmaker and as a storyteller that he considered that essential? Like he said with 2001, he said that it does take a few runnings to decide, how long things should be, especially the ones which do not have narrative advancement as their guideline.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And very much so, even with Full Metal Jacket, and almost every film that he did, he wanted to defy this sort of notion of a set form to film. And And I think that was constantly on his mind, of telling a story in a way that didn't have to be told by the numbers.
You mentioned that. I just want to touch back because you mentioned that, your idea, your focus was to center it around Bill's journey. So with that in mind, what your other criteria? What were any other criteria you had as to what could be removed, and how did you decide what could go, what had to stay, and how that all came together?
Well, that sort of thinking happened after. So the initial one was, let me get in Bill's head. Let me get in Bill. And if this doesn't affect Bill or change his trajectory or motivate him or tie back to Bill or reveal something about Bill, then it has to go. That was the initial, everything was cut along that line. Then when I came back and sort of analyzed it, it was like, okay, is this what Kubrick would have wanted? Because is this what Kubrick was going for? What was he going for? What were him and Frederick Raphael going for when they wrote the screenplay? What was Arthur Schnitzel's initial intention when he wrote the novella? So that started to play in of like, okay, I had this instinct, and now let me look at it from get a huge macro view of everything and see if those instincts still hold up. Some of them did, most of them did, and some of them didn't. Where I realized like, I got too choppy on that one, or this didn't work there. And so I think about 3 or 4 of the initial edits that I made got changed. I redacted them essentially after I did all my research.
There are, I believe, 28 establishing shots of New York City, and you cut 10 of them.
Some of them, yeah, that's a really good point, because it was really interesting to me the way he used establishing shots. Sometimes it felt like, this is a critical statement, but sometimes I was like, is that an establishing shot from Seinfeld? Like just left over? Like, they sort of felt like, some of them just felt like they were just placeholders in a way.
If you started hearing that really bad slap bass line.
Yeah, exactly. And I think someone did cut a trailer of Eyes Wide Shut, the 90s family comedy movie.
God.
Or family comedy sitcom. Yeah, but it was like, and that's precisely what Christopher Nolan, when they interviewed Christopher Nolan about Eyes Wide Shut, that he kind of harped on those specific shots as being evidence for why the film wasn't finished, because they tended to, the cuts, especially the audio, was really harsh. So you'd go from this quiet scene to this harsh audio of the city, and you could argue that was done on purpose, or you could argue that was just not fixed. I mean, obviously they could have sweetened the audio and done a lot of things to the film. Obviously, they were contractually obligated not to edit the film at all because of Kubrick's contract with Warner Brothers. But they could put in the music, fix the sound, obviously put bodies in front of naked people. But so I started to think, well, why are those establishing shots there? Some of them fell by the wayside just simply by the nature of a scene cut out or a character removed or certain things like that. But then there was a specific instance of one where when Bill leaves Marion's, and that's where the dream world starts to begin, not only in the novella, but I think in the film itself. And when he leaves, it goes to a wide shot of the street, and then to him walking. But when he leaves Marion's, you see him walking out into the background of the shot, and then it fades slowly into the city where the sounds start to come in, and they're so obtrusive. Right. And it almost took me out of this sort of weird experience I just had where Marion's making out with him, but her dad's dead, and it was like this such an odd thing. And then to have the sounds come at me like that, and I'm just looking at an empty city. I know he's walking out into New York City. Like, I know he's already there. I didn't necessarily need that information, because I get that same information if I cut straight to him walking.
It's possibly fair to say that, a few of those shots may well have been removed, if Kubrick had lived.
I mean, yes, obviously you want to be as diplomatic as possible because you don't want to be in the fire seat like me, but I think that raises a really good point about The Shining, and I think The Shining serves as, obviously he did edits to the ending of 2001, or edits to 2001 and The Shining after theatrical release.
Mm-hmm.
But he also did the last minute edit to Doctor Strangelove ending with the pie scene gone.
Yeah.
But for me, this film that really serves as precedent and as a sort of a, hey, look at what Kubrick did over here. How could you think that he couldn't do that over here? Is The Shining.
Explain.
Well, because, okay, first of all, the first edit he made of The Shining after it was in theaters was the scene at the end that sort of...
Right.
Almost, it wasn't an explanation, but it was like an ambiguous explanation that, you know, obviously, like... that
Stuart Allman shows up at the hospital.
Right, and it gives Danny the ball, and it was like... You just didn't need it. You know what I mean? And it sort of, it didn't explain everything, but it explained what you couldn't explain.
Right.
And that reveals something about The Shining. It reveals something very interesting about The Shining, which is the supernatural, right? Because Kubrick obviously had his opinions about the supernatural, but The Shining is a supernatural story. I mean, you've got a hotel that possesses people, right? You've got the ball, you've got the photo. So you've got this whole element. And even when Jan Harlan was quoted as saying that when the crew and people on the set, they would ask him to do something and be like, well, what does this mean? Like, and they would ask for interpretation. And he said, Kubrick would say, it doesn't matter. It's a ghost story.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, he knew that he didn't have to explain anything, you know, and Jan even says it's really hard for people to believe that Kubrick didn't need a deep meaning behind it.
It's just such a testament to him, though, is it not? That, like, he was looking for any and all ways to remove that which might give more meaning. Yes,
ambiguity was a huge thing that Kubrick valued. He wanted the audience to discover it themselves. He said this: "It seems to me that works in which the meaning is all too clear are never as powerful and as evocative as works in which the meaning becomes clear and where you enjoy a thrill of discovery."
Right.
And then he goes on to say, it's a more dangerous way to write, because if the audience fails to discover what you mean, you're left quite disturbed. It's always safe, he says this, it's always safer to spell it out in the last scene and tell them exactly what you were after, which all too many people seem to do. But he himself had the penchant to do it, and then he would remove it.
It's brilliant. Is it not? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, that quote, you could literally take that, him saying that about 2001, him saying that about The Shining, him saying that about Eyes Wide Shut. And here he was tasked once again with the supernatural, as it were, in Eyes Wide Shut, of creating a dream world. And what strikes me as odd is that he was willing to go so far because The Shining was a ghost story, but with, you know, to establish that it wasn't real and there was this fantastical supernatural element of, like, ghosts, you know, creeping you out. But then when it came to Eyes Wide Shut, he had this, it was a much finer, subtle dream world, right? Subtle element of the supernatural.
Yeah.
And, like, where you only see it when it's like, where did the mask come from? Do you get what I mean?
Yep, totally.
So that was what was really fascinating to me when I approached this whole thing, was like, would Kubrick, not just the establishing shots, right? But because I felt that one establishing shot broke the dream world for me. It broke that sort of line for me in a way.
Right.
But then you get into, like, the entire character of Ziegler, right? And why he was created in the first place. If you read the memoir, you get into where the mask came from, you know, the differences between the orgy in the novella. And so it brings up a whole host of interpretation. And that was something I was very, very, I care very much to retain that dream world.
Well, now, since you bring up the Ziegler, you cut about a 14-minute segment. You know, the whole pool room scene. That was the biggest cut you made Can we ask, like, why? What was it about that scene that
Yeah.
you felt that could be left out for you to propel the
There was-
story anyway?
There was a few reasons of why I cut the Ziegler scene. Okay. All my thoughts are racing so fast, so I'm going to try to articulate this as clear as possible.
The floor is yours, dude.
So, number one, it was, even though Ziegler was obfuscating the truth, right?
Right.
In that scene, and we don't get the explanation that we kind of want throughout the whole film.
Mm-hmm.
But what Ziegler effectively does is he does deliver me a silver platter of what I'm supposed to interpret.
Interesting.
It's like, let's review over everything you've seen and let's talk about the nuances that all of them raised. And it was sort of like a pat on the back for the film, that it was like, here's all the nuances we've raised, and I'm going to offer you a glib answer that is going to not satisfy any of them, and cause you to almost intellectually wrap your mind around everything you just saw at the height of Bill's emotional fever pitch. When Bill has just realized that there is the body that he caused, whether you could argue that whether it's the same girl or not, you could argue all those things, but for Bill, his reality is that is the girl that sacrificed her life for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I am now feeling the weight of all my actions, all of my deceit, all of these things, which culminates to carry over into when he finds the mask, right?
Right.
But here, now you've got to sit through 14 minutes after you've just went through, hopefully, some of what Bill went through. I mean, because of what I told you before, where his motivation is blurred by all these things he encounters on this Odyssey, it's difficult enough to track with him emotionally because he's not vulnerable in any way. So here you've been on this whole journey, this dreamlike journey, where you're feeling that frustration of not knowing what it means and not knowing where it's going. And then you have to sit through 14 minutes of a pseudo explanation that sort of, I mean, look, the scene is brilliant. It's an amazing scene. Sidney Pollack is freaking brilliant. The camera work is fantastic. The allusion to him, you know, with the cue ball banging it on the table, just like the magistrate, as it were, or the head of the orgy guy with the red carpet and the red pool table and his staff. So I'm not saying that the scene isn't brilliant. What I'm saying is with it gone, you don't miss anything. There's nothing that we gain from it. There's no escalation raised. There's nothing that, in fact, if you were going to say, does it escalate the circumstances or does it de-escalate, you would say that it either keeps the stakes where they are or almost de-escalates them in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like, so then you look at, well, why is Ziegler there? So that was the first reason, right? The second reason is then it's like, who is the character of Ziegler and what does he represent? And on a close inspection or on a quick inspection of the novella, you could see that he's one of the main inventions that Kubrick and Raphael created. It was one of the first things. It was one of the first things that they invented about the whole story. And as a note, Frederick Raphael was really lobbying really hard for Kubrick to include the character of Ziegler simply because it gave the story a shape. And just having come off of Full Metal Jacket, Kubrick was saying, I don't need shape. You know what I mean? A film doesn't need shape. And Frederick Raphael was saying, I'm an Oscar winner, or I'm an Oscar nominee. I need shape. You need shape. Otherwise, the audience is going to get pissed. And so they went back and forth about this Ziegler character. Ultimately, Kubrick arriving at keeping Ziegler. So it was like, well, if he wasn't in the novella and here he doesn't necessarily do anything that changes the story or escalates the story in any way, why is he there?
And there are three characters essentially that you trimmed rather excessively or veritably removed, including of course Ziegler and then Mielich and Sally. So I'm just wondering why do you think that those three characters in particular could have been removed from the film without causing any issues to the story itself?
So we just, obviously with Ziegler, like, you have my reasons there, is that it doesn't necessarily, I didn't completely remove Ziegler. He's still there at the party in the opening.
Mm-hmm.
As far as Milich goes, the reason why I didn't remove Milich, but I seriously cut down anything to do with his daughter. And the reason why, number one, what does she have to do with Bill? Like, how does Bill feel about that daughter?
I mean, a very general response would be to say perhaps in a strange way, because she's so young and he is the father of a young daughter, that he's reviled or horrified by seeing that, because he's on this journey of attempted, sexual pursuit. And here he comes into this, cul-de-sac where he's forced to confront, a guy who knows he's pimping out his own daughter. Okay,
so that's a good point. So would that make him more excited to go to the orgy or less excited to go to the orgy?
I got it. I cannot answer, man. I mean, you bring up a good question.
That's where, because the context, it's not a story about Bill, it's a story about Milich and his daughter. So we deviate from the psychological perspective of Bill, anything that would reveal anything about him. Then it presents us with, well, how do we incorporate this character? What does it mean? And then you start to see that it's like orphaned from meaning, because we don't know how Bill feels about it. And we never do know how Bill feels about it.
That's very well put.
And even more so, we're so excited that he's about to go to this orgy. There's passwords, there's costumes. He's paying 3 times the cost to get the costume, and then he's got to go in. There's these creepy guys. Like, it reminds me of The Shining. There's this fever pitch, which is actually an argument for the second argument for why the Ziegler scene is in The Shining, when he realized in front of an audience, which he was denied of with Eyes Wide Shut. He did not get to screen it in front of audience. And both 2001 and The Shining, he changed those after theatrical release because of the audience reaction. Same with Dr. Strangelove. He took that custard scene out from an audience reaction. He was actually very open to audience's reactions. It very much solidified or made clear the things he needed to change, and I think that's why he had the penchant for last minute changes. But he was denied that with Eyes Wide Shut.
Right.
So there was a fever pitch. There's a fever pitch going to the orgy, and there's a fever pitch going him discovering the mask at home. Right? They're both different kinds of culminations, but they're both very integral to me being engaged as an audience. So Kubrick's asking a lot of me when I'm so excited. He's teasing me, essentially.
Right.
Like, I'm ready to go to this orgy, and now I got to figure out about this daughter and these guys she's sleeping with, and it makes me confront that this whole journey is disgusting, and oh my gosh, prostitution is nasty, and this whole idea of this sexual underbelly of society is morally corrupt.
Mr. Milich, I've obviously left things a bit late tonight, so if you don't mind...
Okay. I'm in hurry too, Doctor, to get back to bed.
I understand.
Shh. So, Black Cloak. Did you hear something? What is it? What is it? What is this? What on earth is going on here?
Oh, Milich, I can explain everything.
You! What are you doing here? I tell you, I promise I'll kill you! And you, have you no sense of decency? Gentlemen, have you no sense of decency?
Milich, have you gone crazy? We were invited here by the young lady.
Young lady, it is my daughter. And couldn't you see she is a child? You will have to explain to police.
The police?
You little whore, I kill you for this. I promise, I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Hold on to that gun for me, please.
Milich, this is preposterous. The young lady invited us here.
Couldn't you see she is deranged? Doctor, sorry to keep you waiting. Gentlemen, this is now a police matter. You will please stay here until I return.
What is it? Let us out of here.
I'm afraid that's out of the question. Doctor, sorry, what color did you say? Black?
Black.
Gentlemen, please have the goodness to be quiet for the moment. Couldn't you see I tried to serve my customer? Sorry. And you, little whore, go to bed at once, you depraved creature. I deal with you as soon as I serve this gentleman.
And now I'm derailed, and to be honest with you, I'm now, my eyes are opened to what Bill's doing, and I'm no longer with Bill. I'm now intellectually considering what Bill is. Now, the other reason why is if you go back to the novella, there's a whole through line of Bill's crisis of identity, of sexual and his sexuality and his masculinity that is so beautifully narrated throughout the novella that you just don't understand in Eyes Wide Shut. And particularly that event with the daughter is only seen through understanding that theme throughout the film that Arthur Schnitzler so beautifully wove in.
Yeah.
So now when I'm reading it in the book, it totally makes sense, and it adds to this turmoil developing in Bill. Because what you don't learn from Eyes Wide Shut that you do learn from Dream Story is that daughter reminded him of the girl he had a crush on in Denmark, where they went on vacation at the beach, right, which is what translated the story where Alice saw the naval officer who she was attracted to. Well, in the book, Bill Fridolin retorts to quote unquote Alice's story. Albertine, sorry, I'm getting all the names mixed up now with the book and the movie. He retorts with telling his wife about the young girl he saw on the beach, which, as an aside, the young girl on the beach reminded him of his wife when she was younger, which is a theme in the book of all these girls reminding him of his wife when she was younger, which is why I think all the girls look the same in Eyes Wide Shut, where he was trying to translate that. But what you don't see is that now that he kind of takes that experience and he starts to twist it into this whole idea that he's so filled with fear that he can't consummate with these women because he's terrified. He's also terrified that he's like not like a soldier like he once was, or that he's afraid of a duel. That's why you have the frat boy scene and what that means to him. And it starts to bubble up this whole theme and story in Bill's psychology that you just never are attuned to in Eyes Wide Shut at all.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And those things ultimately was like, once that's gone, now what that scene with Millich represents is we needed to see that Bill was desperate. Like, why is it there at all? Like, because where I cut it is when he offers to go, I think 3 times over. He at least doubles, or 3 times over the rental price to rent the costume at 2 a.m. Yeah, right. What that says to me is Bill is so desperate to have a sexual adventure to satisfy his insecurities that his wife stirred up, that he is willing to pay a ridiculous amount of money, wake up a guy at 2 a.m., and essentially cajole him to get him this costume so that he can go to this orgy. That's what that scene represents. And then later it pays off when we find that he forgot the mask.
There is almost a bizarrely farcical aspect to that whole part of it.
It totally is. And that's, when you research the people who were originally cast, he wanted to cast like Woody Allen or Steve Martin. He felt like this was going to be a sexual comedy.
Tell me the story, though, before I go. Stanley Kubrick. Mm-hmm. You went to London.
This would be about 1980.
So 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You go to London. Mm-hmm. He has seen you in The Jerk, or what? What was it?
He saw me on a television show in London.
But had he seen a movie? Had he corresponded with you before then or not?
No.
No. So, okay, pick it up. You tell me this.
It might even be before 1980 because I don't think The Jerk was out, but I had come to London to do my stand-up act on television. And then I got a call from Stanley Kubrick the next day saying, I'd like to meet with you. And so I went to his, estate, and he was just, he pitched me what became Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this was 1980, and it wasn't made until 1999.
Right. It was based on a book by Schindler.
Right.
And I think the book was called Rhapsody. Had different titles and different translations. And it was a enigmatic book, a beautiful book. And then, of course, never.
Okay, but did anything happen? Did he call you up and say, have you read the book? Did you call him back and say, I think this would make a great movie?
I didn't know that I was supposed to call Stanley Kubrick back. It was like, huh?
What did you think was going on?
I went to his estate, and we had dinner. We played chess.
Oh, that's right. That was the other part.
Yeah, we played
chess. And he was very good at chess?
Very good at chess.
Yeah. Are you pretty good?
He beat me, let's put it that way.
Yeah, but did you make it competitive for him?
I think I did, a bit. Yeah, a bit.
Yeah.
Because there is an element of comedy to it that lends to that sort of farce element, which I think Kubrick looked for that element of farce and would ground it in reality as much as he could. And in all of his works. And that's why, Steven Spielberg, who I love that quote, he said, Stanley taught us how to watch a movie. But but I think it was Sidney Pollack who said, if it's in a Kubrick movie, it's the biggest, if it's going to be a space movie, it's the biggest space movie of all time. If it's a dramatic scene, it's the most dramatic scene. So Kubrick was always looking for, how can I have this hyper realistic representation that is completely 100% believable?
Yeah.
But to get back to the character of Sally, that's a very interesting one because I've read. I think there's two translations of Dream Story or Traum Nouvelle out there, and I think in the translation I have, I couldn't pick up where, and I read it twice recently, where the difference between Sally, I don't even think she has a name in the novella, but her character in Sally mentions that that Domino gets AIDS, and Mitzi, the girl that she gets syphilis, right?
Right.
In the novella. But I went back to find that, and I couldn't even find that in the novella, and it's such a minor scene that they made more of a major scene in Eyes Wide Shut. That it actually, I was like, huh, well, okay, the why does that scene exist? Why is it there? Is it just simply to try to remain true to the novella,
right,
and the adaptation to New York, that she would have gotten AIDS modern day, and that
right,
this and the other, or was it adding to the fact that maybe she was taken down by Ziegler and his whole crew? Either way, it always sort of felt like a red herring to me, or a MacGuffin, because here, in one sense, he's sitting here talking, and it was really confusing too that he was. To me, the scene was so unclear, and it didn't do anything for Bill's story. And actually, I think it made it more unclear of what he was going through psychologically, because obviously he's just almost lost his life,
right,
supposedly at this orgy, and now he's come home, and his wife has emasculated him even further by saying she was having sex with 100 men in her dreams, right?
Yeah.
And then laughing at him, right? So now he's got this moral crux added with inflamed jealousy, and that's where you see him. He tries to call back Marion, right, to actually go and consummate that whole offering, and then Carl answers the phone.
Hello? Hello?
And he's so in that moment after he hangs up, he's so disturbed by the fact that he did that. Like he's in this whole sea of all this that he goes directly to Domino's with a gift.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it worked really well to have him just go walking in the street and then get followed. And it was like so fresh on your mind that it was like, he's here now, tried again to cheat and then been thwarted. And then now he's being followed, which was the warning. So to me, it tied it up a lot nicer for a character that I felt like was, it ultimately just didn't deliver because you knew he didn't sleep with her. So you knew Bill didn't have AIDS. And the argument is that, oh, well, this scene helps you go, whew, dodged a bullet there.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't want Bill to dodge bullets. He's in the middle of reaping what he sowed, essentially. He's getting the consequences to his actions, which he's now, and that he calls Marion at all was enough for me to feel like the jealousy in him was dying in the midst of these circumstances, which is very interesting too.
That's well said. Yeah. The jealousy in him was dying. That's interesting.
And so to me, it was similar to, the Sally scene was very similar to the frat boy scene in the beginning to me. Which by the way is the scene that I contemplate putting back in the most is the frat boy scene. The reason why is because so much of what's translated about those scenes and what they mean to Bill happen in the novella, but they don't happen in Eyes Wide Shut.
What's specified? Listen, she had a red rose in her mouth. She was doing a Mexican lap dance right in my face. I'm serious, I got scars on the back of my neck.
Hey, what team's this switch hitter playing for?
Looks like the pink team,
This
huh?
faggot.
Faggot?
Merry Christmas, Mary.
Hey, hold on. My brothers are back there. They prime cut of meat, baby.
You want to take a ride in this bike, Kelly, you stupid faggot?
Looks like we got a mood puncher going
You
on
should
here,
have
huh?
kids standing so close. Get out of here.
I got dumps that are bigger than you.
Come on, Macho Man. Come on, Macho Man.
You want a piece of this, baby?
Exit only, honey. Go back to San Francisco where you belong, man.
And when he gets hit by the frat boys, it's like the book ties it into a whole theme of him, having this midlife crisis as a man. Is he tough anymore? Is he like a soldier? Could he take these guys if he fought them? And he starts to consider all that, and that fuels his inner jealousy for him to go and to have a sexual conquest, right? And so, but that's all lost in the film. It's not lost in the film. But what it does is he's just left Marion's. He sees the couple making out. He thinks of the naval officer in the same position making out with Alice.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's so disturbed by that thought, and that's when you get that great rear projection shot where it starts to. I believe that he starts using it there because that's where the dream world's coming in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he collapses as a break, just like those establishing shots. He breaks himself out of that dream world, comes around the corner, and gets hit.
Yeah.
Hit by these guys, and it was redundant in a way because the hitting of it snaps him out of the dream world, just like he just snapped himself out of the dream world. And then at the same time, it brings up this idea that he's emasculated by these guys, but we never really feel like Bill's being driven by him not being this tough guy, or how other men perceive him or his fear to stand up to men. We don't see it in the scene where Bill, maybe would have fought those guys or not. Like they don't offer to fight him. They don't give him the old pump fake where he cowers in fear, So it doesn't establish essentially what that theme is in the book. And then it never really even pays off. And then once it's gone, it sort of just makes it more concise that he's driven by this jealousy, So that was why I removed that. And that's why I removed the Sally scene, because it's there, but it doesn't further my understanding or anything. If anything, it makes it more unclear because actually Bill starts to make out with Sally. And it's so weird. It is the most off-putting scene. I would rather see him almost kiss a dead woman than I would see him after he knows that he almost died because of his, promiscuity. So yeah, so that's why I removed it. And then once you remove it and you see it, you're actually now tracking the journey with him. That's part of that whole fever dream thing. Is it creates this momentum and this sort of more of a swept up feeling as you track with Bill.
Right.
All that
right.
said, I still watch Eyes Wide Shut in the full version and can appreciate all of those. As it does, the film does have an independent theme that isn't in the novella, which is this whole idea of a sexually perverse society that's sort of like the wayward society, the powers that be, the Illuminati, or these elite circles, that is a more prevalent theme in Eyes Wide Shut. One blog that I read, the guy said that basically in the novella you have this sexual odyssey coming forth from the insecurities of Fridolin, where he's going out to meet this need within himself, and in Eyes Wide Shut, it's almost like he's being attacked by sex.
Right. Interesting.
You get what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely.
And so for fans of the people that most of these three characters honestly start to represent the milieu or the commentary that people love about Kubrick, where he makes commentary on society. Right, you have the daughter being onboarded into prostitution. You have the whole idea of AIDS and the cost of sexual promiscuity. And then you have Ziegler, who's like the 1%, and he's in these sexual societies that are essentially, some people have even connected it to MK Ultra and the whole idea of like the occult and ritualistic sacrifice. So, and I don't think Kubrick got fully into that. It's really funny, actually, what they base that cult on in the book. It's really fascinating. Frederick Raphael just invented this cult and sent it to Kubrick as a illegally recovered FBI document. And he got a call from Kubrick like immediately. He's like, "I need to know where you got that document." He's like, "I made it up." And he's like, "Are you sure?" Like, he was so freaked out that they had stumbled on some illegal like FBI document. But it was in a sense an amalgam of like the whole idea of an occult secret society, like the Freemasons or something like that.
Sure.
So yeah,
well,
that's
rightfully
something.
So, I mean, Kubrick, did live through the generation that saw, the scandal with the Pentagon Papers, break, which ultimately,
Nixon.
You've got Nixon, then you've got the '60s, the sexual revolution, and then AIDS. Yeah, exactly. So it all makes. I all appreciate it, and I actually really enjoy that aspect of it. But for Eyes Wide Cut, for people that interpret the film as a commentary on those things and not as a film about sexual frustration within a marriage or the woes of trying to contain sexuality and monogamy, like for the people that see it as like this sort of commentary on secret societies and Illuminati and those things, they'll be so sorely disappointed.
Sorely disappointed, right? And I was just going to add that for what it's worth, like that's exactly why Eyes Wide Cut works for me. I don't claim to say what anybody should feel about any Kubrick film, let alone Eyes Wide Shut. But I personally get turned off as soon as somebody says, "Oh, well, I mean, the whole movie was like, he knew he was going to die, and it was a secret society plot, and it's all about the Illuminati." And, everything all the way down the line to like, that was their payback because he was going to talk about faking the moon landing and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, that is a background framework which exists, as mise en scène, if you will. But that's just there to tell us a story about the trials of marriage. And this is just one chapter of a marriage that we watch these two people go through. And we basically just follow the male character on his one night journey, and all that other stuff that you guys want to like read into Kubrick. Oh, but he had a 200 IQ, and surely he must have meant to tell a story about Bill and Alice as a ruse to really tell us about secret societies. And I'm always just like, no, it's the other way around. And if that's the end of the conversation with that person, fine, so be it, for me. So my point is, that's why I like Eyes Wide Cut personally, because I've always felt that what really needs to be focused on in order to enjoy it, when I finally came to the point where I could sit there and enjoy it and allow myself to be, hypnotized and knowing the film, scene by scene well enough that I could know what was around the next corner. I knew what to expect. I was able to, for my own, edification and enjoyment, just kind of come away with this idea that, I like the story about Bill and Alice. And, we have to go back to 1999 too, because, the limited promotional material that was being put out and the rumors that were out there was like, oh, he's making a porno. He's making an X-rated film that's going to have these scenes of graphic orgy depictions and stuff. And no, everybody, I think, that went to see some kind of perverse, Stanley Kubrick movie, that was akin to pornography, of course would have come away disappointed. But then it was probably those same, persons who, as time went on, they were like, well, what else can I get out of it? Ooh, secret societies. Yeah. And all the while, it's really it's a story about Bill and Alice.
Right. Totally. I completely agree. Now, we should say I am all game for Room 237. I love a good conspiracy theory. I love going down the rabbit hole of seeing if they can convince me. Most of the time, I'm not convinced. Most of the time I err on the simplest reason is the explanation.
Exactly.
But I do enjoy having my mind expanded of the possibilities. And to be fair, in that if even though I'm not necessarily I'm not akin to believe conspiracy theories, in Eyes Wide Cut as it stands, I still believe that all the things that you could intuit from Eyes Wide Shut about that whole secret society, about those themes, still very much exist, and in fact fulfill exactly what Kubrick's aim was to produce that ambiguity where you don't know, where it isn't explained, where it's reserved why the mask is there, or whether Ziegler was involved at all. And because Ziegler's at the party, it does look like the party at the mask ball and the Christmas ball. And so Ziegler's there, he goes up, he knows Ziegler, and then when he arrives at the orgy, he nods to him. So you could very much still intuit all of the things you could intuit from the first film. They're just not readily sort of handed to him on the platter, which is what effectively happens between Ziegler and Bill in that pool room scene.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting, but it's very much what I think is very akin to The Shining and what happened with The Shining, where Jan Harlan was quoted about saying that, when he said Kubrick would tell him it's a ghost story, it doesn't have any meaning, that he and Kubrick were both offended by all the conspiracy theories that came out about, that after Stanley died, he said that's when all the conspiracy theories about The Shining started to crop up. He said some were funny and some were partly insulting. Well, I think as you bring up something too, this is really interesting, is the whole idea of what people invent around Kubrick and what Kubrick intended. Right? So a really great example of that, which I think is an attribute to him opening the door to semiotics and the whole idea of symbolism in his film and what things represent, because he did that. Because he was aware of that, what happens is that when actually Kubrick makes a mistake or there's something by accident, they get attributed with deep meaning because people are akin to him already imbuing all his films with so much symbolism, with so much things. So, for instance, there's that interview where he brings up about Full Metal Jacket. I think it's the interview from Rolling Stone, where he brings up that there's a monolith in the background on fire in Full Metal Jacket. And Kubrick was like, yeah, we noticed that. It was completely by accident. We noticed it later in the editing room. And the interviewer says, you're never going to convince anyone that was an accident. And Kubrick laughed. But I think that I think it's indicative of him as an artist that, is that when you're working on the level that he works, even his mistakes sort of fall in line thematically, or even his accidents fall in line with everything that the film's that the film is saying,
Well, we recently just spoke with someone who would know very well the, yes or no. And I asked him about the chair behind Jack Nicholson in The Shining and what it means or doesn't mean, because it disappears and then it's back. Right. And very matter of factly, we were told, Stanley just was going for which shot looked better. He was completely aware of it being a continuity error. It was no big mystery that the chair should be gone and then replaced. Nonsense. He just was looking for the shot. I want to have you explain something for the listeners, that because you were able to create this using what's called fair use, and your disclaimer on your website, eyeswidecut.com, says that this, was created using fair use. And they have, of course, gone on to, in the age of social media, give us a whole world of fan edits. And I want to ask you how you think they're affecting the original films, if you think they're, a good thing necessarily, or whatever your opinion may be. But firstly, if you could,
Yeah, let's unpack fair use first. So the basic idea of fair use is that there's a stipulation that allows for the reuse of copyrighted material for the intended purposes of commentary, criticism, and education.
Right.
All three of which you could argue Eyes Wide Cut is doing. But within that, there are certain like red flags that kind of are harder to hold up in court, which is like the first one is how much of the copyrighted original material are you using? Mm-hmm. Which that would be honestly the the most gray area that's the rub for Eyes Wide Cut, because I mean essentially I'm using 120 minutes out of 160 minutes, so you do the math. And then it's are you selling it? No, I'm not selling it, so I'm not making any profit off of it. Right. And then one of the other main ones is, are you affecting the market of the original? So can it be proven that people are watching your version instead of watching the original version? Like, are you robbing them of money that would be had your version not existed? Right. And I think to the argument of that is Eyes Wide Shut. When I started this, there was no market for Eyes Wide Shut. Yeah. It had pretty much been completely disregarded, because I'm not the first to do this. Steven Soderbergh famously recut 2001. Honestly, I haven't seen it, but from everything that I can gather of it, it looked really bad. Like, he just completely butchered it.
Don't waste your time.
He was so famous at the time and got so much press coverage for it. I think Warner Brothers had to put a cease and desist on it. They have not yet done that to me. So I think I'm prepared for them if they're angry about it. But one of the things that I took great care to do is to make the section where I try to bring education into it by teaching about editing, by the cutting room floor section of my website, where I have GIFs of every single frame that was cut out of the film, and then subsequent explanations, and then and also on each page of my website I have a button for you to rent the film on Amazon to watch the original. So
right.
Everything, even though my intentions are innocent, it doesn't make me innocent, essentially.
Yeah. I catch your drift. Sure.
So in that that's kind of, I don't even know if this recording could probably be used against me if it were to come in that. So I guess that's a call of urgency if you're interested in this, watch it as soon as possible, because it might get more difficult to watch it later. And I mean, the thing is that as far as fan edits go, I think it's a brilliant thing. I think that it's amazing to me that it's been said that editing is the only true art form, or the only original art form used in film. And it was invented solely because of film. And that's why is, obviously, like, it uses photography, it uses audio recording, it uses music, it uses all these other disciplines, but the only one that's true and original to film is editing. And so the fact that technology has made it to where everyone can participate in this art form of editing, the fan edit actually is this really beautiful sort of remix culture that allows us to express ourselves into actually you do it out of, you don't do it because you hate
you're not trying to one up.
Right. Or I mean, maybe even if they are, but then it's up to the market to decide, did they one up it or did they not? It's this sort of weird judicial arm of like film of like, you know, cause obviously there's, I recently, actually, funny enough, I discovered fanedit.org. I don't know if you're familiar with fanedit.org, but I had no idea that there's a whole community online of like really serious and aggressive fan editors who like, they've done like 5 and 6 films. They have voting monthly of like the best fan editor of the month. Like it's a very seriously organized underground kind of like thing. And I had no idea about it, but when I found it, I felt free. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, sure.
I was like, I'm not abnormal. Cause I've had this burden of feeling like very isolated that I did this thing and not even knowing if there were other people that were like me that loved something so much they wanted to chop it up, you know, or repackage it or repurpose it.
Are you still happy with your edit, or are there scenes or shots that you would put back?
Oh gosh. You know, that's so funny because I am, but that's not to say that every single review I get on my site, every single reaction I read about it, I very much consider everyone's criticism of it. And I think, does that make me want to put it back in the film? Like I recently had a buddy of mine who's a very talented filmmaker and editor himself. And some of his arguments made me reopen the project and go and start to tinker with it, you know, and go, like there's a couple things that I, even now is I was preparing for this interview, like there's certain things that I'm reconsidering changing to it that are minor. I reconsider everything. I every time I read something about Eyes Wide Shut, everything, I'm always looking in the filter of like, did I get this right? Am I threading that line? Should I put back in the Millich stuff? You know what I mean? I think about the Millich stuff a lot. I think about the frat boy one the most because it is arguably, with my first instinct of Bill's story, it is the most directly revealing of what maybe is going on with Bill and his inner life, and is the easiest to kind of put back in, even though I would probably truncate it a little bit. I think about my opening, like it really frustrates me. I don't want to spoil the opening for anyone because I feel like that's the most exciting part of the cut because the cut made sense to me with what I was aiming to do, but then at the same time, it also serves as a way of like announcing like, this is not the original. You know, this is a very different, this is a very different film. And will you come along with me? And there's some limitations on that where I wish I could put a fade between the opening shots, but because they're pre-existing and I don't have the tails on them, the fade sort of fades into other. So you see like Bill pop up kind of mysteriously when you try to fade these two shots together.
Interesting.
So there's little things like that it's like, yeah, I'm always thinking about, should I put that back in? Should I not? Should I do this? Yeah.
Well, you know, I'd be remiss to not point out that, you know, as you know, you surely know there's been some negative, you know, brushback, you know, and I'm just wondering how you respond to that. And, you know, do you feel you have any need to justify, even if just to yourself, like why you went and did this?
No, I don't necessarily. I don't think I need to justify it. I think I need to clarify it because so much of the negative criticism comes when people think that my version is an indictment of the original. And that's really difficult for people to ascertain that, no, I'm not saying the original is bad. You know, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying this is better. What I am saying is if this one, you know, if this one could exist without that, why is that there? And let's analyze that on a fair level. And then people who are unable to speak objectively about subjective things and know what's objective and what's subjective, that's where the conversations get really awesome. And if you go to the website, eyeswidecut.com, you can see how I respond to everyone. I take everyone's criticism and their own opinions, and I invite people to, because part of what this project has proven to me to be is that I cut what I feel is the most you could cut out of the film while retaining that dreamlike essence. So I didn't want to do like a sensible, what Kubrick would have done, probably cut 15. I think if you had to pay me, if I had to bet like how much Kubrick would have cut out, I'm guessing he would have cut 15, 20 minutes. And I cut 40, right? So it's an obvious statement for me that it's like, I want to provide an anchor for you to say, oh no, I would have put this back in. It's going to prove to you, like, if it's gone, it's going to prove to you, like, because that's what I implore people when they watch it. I say, look, watch mine for fun and don't try to think of what the original was unless something comes up to you. Like if it comes up as missing and you're not swept along by this version of the film, if it comes up, then let's analyze that. Why does it come up for you? Do you think it's an aspect of story and story continuity and whether it makes sense and you can track with it? Or is it because of something about you that you particularly like that scene or respond to it or feel that it draws out an aspect of the story that's important to you?
Well, that's what it's about, engagement. And I was just trying to add before that, I think your website is great. I mean, it's beautifully designed. And, Stephen and I particularly love the cutting room page where you detail, each cut with the time code, the duration, and a note as to why you cut each part. So, did you build the website? Because I want our listeners to check it out.
Yeah, I built the whole thing. I built the whole thing with myself with Squarespace. And then I had a buddy of mine, Gabe, who is really talented at this stuff. There would be blocks because now I know how to do it, but at the time I didn't know how to do it. I would say, hey, I want to get a discussion thing put here. And there's a lot of forum help that you can do to start to customize the existing Squarespace stuff. I know there's other ones that are really popular too, but I think there's a lot online about Squarespace, and that's part of why I wanted to use it, is because so many issues have been discussed already. So it's like a Google away to figure out how to do what I want to do with it, and all that stuff. So on some of the more customized aspects of it, I had a little bit of help. But yeah, designed it myself. Interestingly enough, I appreciate your compliment about the cutting room because that actually took longer for me to do than the cut itself.
Oh, I imagine.
And it's not done. I'm always updating it because I'm always learning more. I'm always understanding more. So I'm updating the instinctual explanation of why it was cut, but then also the educated, researched, as it ties into the novella. So I'm actually considering putting a section next to the explanation of the cut of how it holds up to the novella. And so you could actually do a comparison sort of as you see the images and what they mean to the film itself, but then also compared to the original novella. So that's something that's in the works.
It's just up to to people out there to discover it and for us to help put the word out. God, I feel like that. I feel like that astronaut. We're only too happy to be able to oblige in 2001. It's just our job to help you do what you need to do, and we're only too happy to be able to oblige. Is that chicken? Something like it, anyway. Getting better at it all the time.
Oh man,
good stuff. Well, man, we've kept you on a long time, and I don't want to keep.
I mean,
you much
honestly,
longer.
Did we cover everything?
We pretty much did. I mean, I have two other questions I think I should ask. One is, have you ever thought about re-editing any other films?
That's a really great question. Yes. I'll start with Kubrick's first. I have thought about re-editing some of other Kubrick works, and I'm torn. And the reason why I'm torn is because what gave me I wouldn't call it permission, but it felt more permissive for me to cut Eyes Wide Shut because Kubrick wasn't alive in the final months before the preparation. So it left an open-ended mystery. Where I run into a rub with other Kubrick films is he didn't re-edit them himself beyond what he already re-edited them. So he had time to sit, and reconsider them, because he showed that he re-edited The Shining twice, right after theatrical release and months later for the international release. So it showed me that if he wanted to re-edit it for whatever reason on some other thing, he would have done it, So I'm hesitant to do that with other Kubrick works, even though the ideas that I've had one was presented to me about Full Metal Jacket and doing like an intercut version of Full Metal Jacket, which I think is really fascinating. I haven't gone back and reconsidered the film heavily enough to know if I would, if even that's possible, or if it's something I would want to do. But that idea alone excites me. And then one that I have seriously considered and may do, but like I said, I'm so torn over that idea, that is to do 2001: A Space Odyssey, which would be just, I often want to watch 2001, but I don't often have the time. You know, like I want to be able to watch the 2001 and get the whole film without the time commitment. And I would want to create a version for those of you who want to like revel in it in a truncated, because I saw a 15-minute cut of the film.
Wait a minute. Didn't you tell us that you were like, you know, all about marriage, and here you are like commitment phobic to a Kubrick film, dude?
Well, yeah, that's part of the reverence of marriage is heavily considering it before you commit, because you understand the level of what that commitment entails. So
I'm just busting you up.
No, it's great though. But you like how I wormed out of it, you see? I got my way out of that.
Very cleverly.
I Muhammad Ali'd that question.
Yes, you did, sir. So rope a dope.
But yeah, that's something I really want. That's something I want for myself. I don't know if I would release that publicly. But I will say, I mean, you are aware that Kubrick himself was a fan editor.
Meaning?
Well, so he used to play this game with Sidney Pollack where he would find a commercial and they would both cut different versions of it to see who could cut it down to its most bare essential form and still communicate, because Kubrick was obsessed with commercials and how much they could communicate in such a short period of time. And so here's Kubrick re-editing someone else's work. I mean, you know.
I thought you were referring to feature films, but no.
No.
Too cool.
I mean, but still, you know, on that level, I think Kubrick was obsessed with economy of story, but then at the same time, not being held down by story, right? So that's where you see him breaking the rules of quote unquote principles of narrative, of narrative screenplay, you know, principles and things like that. But at the same time, he was obsessed with communicating the most. He was obsessed with density, you know?
Right.
In that, right. So I'm like, that's one little aside, one little story or anecdote that I hold on to that makes me think, I think Kubrick would have been initially highly annoyed of Eyes Wide Cut and would have had a knee-jerk reaction of being bothered by it. But then I think there would have been another part of him, that the chess player in him, that would have been like, huh, you know, and would have considered the move. And I think he would have sized it up to see if I was a real chess player or not, you know?
Right. So in answering that question for yourself, the question I might ask is like, you know, forgive me if it's obtuse, but what is there anything that you hope that your version, Eyes Wide Cut, that it achieves?
Yes.
Beyond what's okay.
Yes. My hope for this film is what it served for me, which is a portal, a doorway, a red carpet into a deep study and appreciation and honor for what I feel is the greatest filmmaker of all time.
Right on.
That this would be that runway for a young filmmaker who's intimidated by the gravity of all the surrounding things around his films, that they would say, you know what? It's amazing, but it's not precious. Let me get my hands dirty and let me learn from him and let me look from an eye-to-eye view with Kubrick as opposed to a pedestal, which he himself told. It's one of my favorite quotes. He told Nicole Kidman, he said, never put me on a pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
And for the sole reason that it stifled creativity.
Absolutely. No, I knew where you were going with that. Yeah.
And you know, it was the other discovery that I made doing this project was just how much Kubrick was at the mercy of his audience and knew it. and how open and collaborative he was. You know, there's this sort of, like you said, this hermetic auteur. It's not just him as a person, but as an artist, that he was this auteur, domineering, stubborn guy. And he wasn't. He was so open to collaboration. Like, you see it where... Yeah, with Full Metal Jacket with Lee Ermey, like, you know, just bringing him on and letting him improvise, and hearing the stories about how they came up with different dialogue for all the scenes in Eyes Wide Shut, and like on the day, and they would just rewrite the scenes all day before they shot them, and then him being open to taking scenes out at the request of Warner Brothers, and being sad when the audience, you know, didn't respond the way he wanted, but knowing that he was adjusting the film based on the audience screenings.
Right.
You know, it totally shatters this sort of like this guy that I know what's better for the audience than the audience itself. And there are cases where he did. And I think that's why we speak of him as a genius. But
well, he also managed to be able to be his own final arbiter of taste on, you know, what he wanted, but while at the same time kind of like giving you know, a few inches on the whole notion of like test marketing and, you know, screenings and such. And personally, like, I'm not alone, but, you know, it's a thing that just needs to be done away with, in my opinion. I mean, with few exceptions. I mean, personally, as a lifelong like cinephile, like, I loathe the idea that movies have to be approved by the lowest common denominator in endless amounts of screenings and then sent back to recut as though we're all the same. Like, as though. If you don't like that kind of movie, then don't see it. It doesn't matter. But Hollywood is doing not more than like churning out, you know, how many more Marvel movies do we need right now? Because at the end of the day, I've seen a good many of them, and all I know is at the end of them, you're left feeling the exact same emotion. It doesn't matter which superhero it is. One of them's gonna die. They're gonna set it up for another one. They're gonna introduce a new character, and there is where is the next, you know, Full Metal Jacket or Eyes Wide Shut, Blade Runner, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and on and on. Like, where is that?
Well, I mean, we were seeing the emergence of like films that became difficult to make in themselves became tentpoles. So like The Revenant and Black Swan and these certain event level art films, because of the difficulty level of actually making them, of learning to do ballet, studying ballet for a year to be able to play the character, or like, you know, literally climbing inside of a bear, you know, or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? There is a resurgence of that, or like the whole rope idea with Birdman, you know, where it's all done in one take essentially, but they stitched it together with new technology. I think that we're seeing the emergence of it. Just requires vision. It requires, I mean, look at Gravity. Gravity, you could say what you will about it as an art film, but gosh, what a ride! You know, it's the first film I bought in 3D. So I think we're seeing the emergence of, I think we're seeing the emergence of a market, because that's at the end of the day with it. So many people don't understand about film and all these things and representation and all. Like, say what you will about what films get made by whom and the gatekeepers and all that. The thing that talks is money.
Of course.
That's it. It's if there's a market, it will be fed. And if they can make money off it, it will be fed. And I don't care if you're an independent filmmaker or if you're a studio. Money is the grease that gets the wheels moving.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, in Hollywood, the directors are the princes, not the kings. The kings are the people with the money.
So what I would like to see is like-minded individuals like yourself and I who care about film as a medium of art, and at the same time of it being... Because look, if Kubrick's films weren't entertaining, we wouldn't be talking, you know. So that thin line between entertainment and art, you know, is very necessary.
Exactly.
I think the word would be compelling. So like,
yes,
we need that. So we need compelling films that touch us on a deep level. And I think what I would like to see is, I'd almost like to see a sort of even more focused crowdfunding. I think crowdfunding has improved mightily with Seed and Spark coming up, and I don't know if you're familiar. They distribute my short film, but what they're doing over there is revolutionary. It's amazing. So I would implore all people who have that passion to put your money where your mouth is and seek out, like you said, seek out and find those people that want to do it and fund them and get them going. Because I think we can see a revolution of another Renaissance period of art film. You know,
you're absolutely right. We certainly could be like on the cusp, you know, at the dawning and not really know it because, like you said, you know, these event pictures that are essentially art house films have really, you know, done an extraordinary thing, even if they don't reach, you know, into middle America or the hearts of every person that likes going to the movies. It really doesn't matter because we are kind of seeing something, and the films you brought up specifically, with Birdman, The Revenant, Gravity, and so forth. And I would just add, you know,
like Whiplash, La La Land, all the Damien Chazelle films. That's what he's doing. He's making it an event. You know, like, I mean, he is doing that very, very well.
And I mean, the one that flew by my radar, and I didn't know to see it until it was already on home video, because I didn't know, but I ended up thoroughly enjoying it, was Shape of Water. And I'll tell you why, man. I mean, it's a Disney movie for grown-ups, as my buddy Scott says. And he's right, but it worked for him. I loved the color palette. I thought the characters were perfectly executed. I wasn't looking for it to be the footprint of any other type of director. I wasn't looking to see who was he influenced by here. I was frankly a little bored of Del Toro after many years. I love Pan's Labyrinth. I do not enjoy his entire body of work. And so that's probably why I didn't end up seeing it. But where it became art house for just the moment that it needed to work for me as a whole, it boiled down to the one moment when she's with the merman in the kitchen and it goes to black and white and the mute girl suddenly begins to sing and it goes into a musical. And I don't know why, but I felt that was like just a beautiful thing that maybe it's been done before in some other way, but maybe I should have seen it coming and I didn't. But at the end of the day, I don't care. It's like Kubrick said. At the end of the day, the final measure of what a film's worth is to us is simply the affection we do or do not have for it.
Right, and that would tie it back into why I do feel like fan edits are important. It represents an affection for that film, and it allows for the indulgence of it.
Yeah, man, totally.
I mean, it's the whole idea of like, how would I, as an adult, like, if I had Pixar films when I was a kid, I would have been obsessed. And then they make short films that are off the thing, and I'm like, oh, it's just a whole world I could dive into. But as an adult, how am I supposed to fan out on my favorite works of art? I mean, everything I've ever loved in my life, I've made my own.
Yep.
Yeah, when I find a work of art, it reveals something to me about myself.
Yep.
And then in turn, I want to express myself through it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes me want to like have the shirt that no one else has the poster that no one else has. I want to express my individuality through that thing.
I do not have, I know exactly what you mean. And the thing it just brought to mind is like, I do not have a massive collection of guitars like other people I know, but the ones that I do have, every one of them, whether it was a hand-me-down from my dad or it was something I bought new or used, I have had to do some kind of modification to every one of my guitars to make it my own.
I totally understand that. Yeah. And I mean, look, that's the brilliant thing about Kubrick and his boxes, is that I think his works endure because his stories emerged like in a volcano eruption out of millions of years of like pressed earth and like, and dirt. And then it just emerges. The ones that do emerge are like full-on volcanic eruptions, and then you get to go and study the whole mountains and islands that have spawned off of it. It's like no one else, and this is saying a lot, because there's a lot of really talented filmmakers throughout the last 100 years who were very obsessive in similar manner to Kubrick. But of all of them, it's hard to say any of them that were as obsessed as Kubrick. Like, that put as much into their stories as Kubrick. I mean, it was like, just the fact that Eyes Wide Shut came out of over 30-year frustration alone makes it tectonic in the fact that it even exists, you know, that he himself, each one of these films represents a certain monolith of who he was, you know, and his contribution to society. So as a fan, even if I may watch other films more than certain Kubrick films, each one of them I've done a deep dive on learning about it and the creation of it and what went into it and how he saw it and how it emerged and all the facets and everything that makes that imbues that work with so much significance and meaning.
Right. Well, it sounds like you're probably perfectly suited to answer my last question, and in some ways you may have already done just that with what you were just saying. The last question we ask everyone is
With Stanley Kubrick.
I think Stanley Kubrick, the thing that stands out the most about him to me is that he was a normal man who was so led by his passion. He was willing to do and become what he needed to become to see that passion come to fruition. And if that meant being a genius, then by golly, he's going to become a genius.
Wow. I don't think I could even think. There's no way to say it better. You really just essentially encapsulated so much of why I've been unable to articulate all these years, whatever it is that's drawn me to him. You kind of just hit that on the head, man. Marshall, thank you.
Wow. Well, you're welcome. Thank you. I don't know what to say to your compliment, but thank you.
I mean it though. That's wow. You know what, that thing when you're you're reasonably articulate, you know, reasonably intelligent, and then there's just something you can't. But you just brought it out. Wow, that's exactly. If I'm going to become if I have to become a genius, then I'll become a genius. God damn it!
This interview to me is the penultimate. This is the one thing that I didn't even know what to imagine I wanted out of Eyes Wide Cut, but this is it. Is this podcast, doing this with you guys, has become the most important thing for me. So I want it to freaking rock. And I want it to be an open door for people to reconsider Eyes Wide Shut, reconsider Eyes Wide Cut, and for them to catch the passion with which this project allows them to dive in on another level.
You're here.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we're all here because of passion. Because look, I got like 3 other careers and 3 kids and a marriage, and like my wife's like, "Why are you slaving? Why are you reading that book again about Kubrick? Like, how is that making any money?" And I'm like, I don't know. I have to do it. One of the things that has fascinated me the most of all the critical elements about Eyes Wide Cut that all the people have brought out or edits they disagreed with, almost no one has identified the hardest cut that I had to make in the whole film. And it's honestly, it's the most game-changing part of it's the most deviating. It totally changes the ending. And almost no one has pointed it out.
Go on.
So basically, when Bill goes to the morgue to find who he thinks is Mandy's body, and then when he leaves, and he has that whole moment where he leans over the body, it's really creepy. It's actually really great to read the book about that because you find out why he's actually doing that. It's almost that magical element that I talked about, that he was so adverse to, or he was so challenged to include that supernatural element or the magical element of Eyes Wide Shut, similar to The Shining. But he's leaning over this body, and then it cuts to him walking out of and he has this and he opens his eyes, what seems like for the first time. To me, that is the titular moment. That is where Eyes Wide Shut gets fulfilled. And he leaves the hospital. He's walking, and that's when Ziegler calls him, and he goes to Ziegler's house, right? And then after Ziegler's, he comes home in this sort of malaise, right? And he kind of like zombie-esque wanders through the house, and that's you got the reveal of the mask to create the dramatic irony, which is a whole nother subject of topic. But basically what I did was I cut the Ziegler scene, which meant that I had to bridge him leaning over the dead body to him coming home and to him and it just didn't fit right. So I actually took another shot from the film. It's the only shot I rearranged in the film, a wide shot of him walking on the street alone and a single car passes. It's so evocative. And I had to stitch all three of those shots together. And so what I did was I actually combined two elements of the soundtrack. And I'm not kidding you, when I put it in, it fit so perfectly. It was odd. It was so odd. And it's so seamless. And it actually, it was so perfectly fit that down to the moment that Bill opens his eyes after leaning over the woman, the biggest piano note in the whole song hits right on that moment. And when that happened and it came together like that, it gave me chills. It was one of those moments where I literally felt like I was at the mercy of the edit as opposed to being the one to execute.
Yeah.
And to me, that moment of the unused soundtrack, right? And it coming together like that completely fulfilled for me exactly what happens to Bill, is that he goes into this dream state and he comes out of it finally awake.
Right.
His eyes are finally opened.
Right. Wow.
I mean, that's what she says. It fulfills the whole quote of the movie that they have at the. To me, it's both in the book and it's I'm gonna pull it up real quick, but that Alice says to him when they're in the toy store, right? So
yeah,
she says this. She says, "I think we should be grateful that we've managed to survive through all of our adventures, whether they were real or only a dream. The important thing is we're awake now, and hopefully for a long time to come."
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it was that moment in the morgue when he finally awoke. Because really what's happening in that moment is he's actually being drawn to kiss her. He's having a necrophiliac sort of magical moment that is so, he's gone that far down the rabbit hole.
Too cool. All this is doing to me is making me want to have a physical copy on my shelf. I got the Mac Mini hooked up to my flat screen, so I can watch anything on it, like movie quality on.
Well, the best way to watch it is to like it. So I left the option for you to like it because it's privately hosted through a certain site. I won't say, but you can. Well, I have to say actually, it's privately hosted through Vimeo, and so you can like it. And then if you're logged into, if you go to Eyes Wide Cut and you like it, and because you're logged onto your Vimeo account somewhere else, you can log onto your Vimeo account on like Apple TV or any screen you want that has the Vimeo app, and you can go to your liked ones and watch it that way.
I streamed it through to my large TV. Yeah, when I watched it, yeah.
And I went to painstaking details to get it at extremely high, like Apple level streaming quality. With the most accurate color that I could find, because there's a lot of variation in the color on the film. So I that was one of the things. I never told you guys this story, but basically, like, I cut the film and then sat on it for a whole year, and then when a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, I rewatched the original, I'm ready to watch your version," that's when I started asking myself, like, that's because I started diving in to like reanalyze all these edits I made and wonder if they were even good or if they stood the test of time.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I doing this? I was like, why am I so obsessed with this film? I thought, who is going to watch this? And I realized that the guy that wrote that article on No Film School, Justin Morrow, that inspired the cut, I thought, oh, well, maybe he would be interested in watching it. So I cold messaged him on Twitter. I said, hey, man, there's this article you wrote about 4 years ago. I have something interesting that you may like based on your article. And he wrote me back like a couple hours later. He's like, what's that? And I said, well, because of your article, I recut Eyes Wide Shut. And he didn't, all he responded was call me. And he sent me his phone number. We had a 2-hour conversation. At the end of the conversation, he said, well, you do realize you're screwed now. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I'm going to publish about your cut, whether you like it or not. Now that I know about it, I'm going to write about it. So you can choose to release it publicly or not. I'm still going to write about it.
Wow,
and
that's
that
cool.
was when I was like, okay, if he hadn't have said that, I would never have released it publicly.
That's what you call a nice problem to have.
Exactly. So that's why I say this wasn't like born out of like a need to get attention or anything like that. It was just, it was actually drawn out of me. It was almost, I almost felt forced. I felt like I feel like I've been on a journey or like led into this dreamlike state, if you will, about this whole project. It's so odd to me that I did this and that it worked and it's out there and there's people responding and I'm having these conversations. It's very, very odd to me. But I love it. I love it because I'm completely obsessed. I'm obsessed.
All right, well, there you have it. Another one that was too much fun. Now it's over and done. It got brewed and stewed, and then it was cooked, and now it's in the books. Big, big, big thanks to our friend Marshall Allman for spending his time with us and shedding so much good light on his passion project, Eyes Wide Cut. You can check it out for yourself at eyeswidecut.com. And while you're there, leave a comment on his site and let him know what you think of his project. And if you like or love Kubrick's final masterwork, Eyes Wide Shut, then odds are good you will also like or love the new book by Robert Kolker and Nathan Abrams called Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick and the Making of His Final Film. And it is now available from Oxford University Press at many reputable booksellers' outlets, as well as some perhaps less than reputable booksellers, which might or might not require you to provide an unknowable password before they agree to sell you this, Abrams and Kolker's fantastic new work. And we will be bringing you minty fresh new interviews when we chat with the authors in an upcoming episode.
May I have the password, please?
Fidelio.
That's right, sir. That is the password for admittance. But may I ask, what is the password for the house?
The password for the house.
Yes?
I'm sorry, I seem to have forgotten it.
That's unfortunate. Because here, it doesn't matter whether you have forgotten it, or if you never knew it. You will kindly remove it.
And to keep you in further taut suspense, we will also have another show dedicated to Eyes Wide Shut with none other than Red Cloak himself, the wonderful and unstoppable Leon Vitali, coming up in the not-too-distant future. Okay, we're asking everyone who enjoys our shows to please give it a rating and or a review. We make this show and bring it to you out of nothing but love for Stanley Kubrick and his unfailingly passionate fans. We do it on our own time, and we do it on our own dime. So, pretty please, be passionate enough to just take a moment and share your rating or review of Kubrick's universe. We care very much about bringing this show to you, doing it right, and doing justice to the legacy of our favorite filmmaker in this brave new digital world. And your support means we can keep going. Keep new content, interviews, and episodes coming. It really does matter.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Please take a minute to just say, you dig it? Okay, once again, my deepest thanks to the usual suspects at Kubrick's universe, Stephen Rigg, James Marinaccio, and Mark Lentz, for all of their efforts, and especially their wonderful natures and great humor. It's an honor for me to have such good friends in these guys, and I hope to always represent their hard-ons. I hope to represent your hard-ons. Yes. At an agency meeting, at a union meeting. I will represent your hard-ons at a union meeting.
Very small.
Okay, once again, my deepest thanks to the usual suspects at Kubrick's universe, Stephen Rigg, James Marinaccio, and Mark Lentz, for all of their efforts, and especially their wonderful natures and great humor. It's an honor for me to have such good friends in these guys, and I always hope to represent their hard work well. In case you were unaware, these three fellows run the preeminent group dedicated to Stanley Kubrick on Facebook. It is the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society, and if you haven't already joined, you should. Password? You don't need no stinking password. So keep smiling through just like you always do, because we'll meet again. Until then, my fellow droogs, this is your host and humble narrator, Jason Furlong, saying, do what you feel, but keep both feet on the wheel. See you next time.
It was real nice talking to you. Bye. Over and out.
Hey, I feel like I'm in good hands.
Yeah, no, you gave him the meat, of the sandwich. Maybe I was like a slice of bread, and then he just goes and he's the chef. So not to worry.
All right, awesome. All right, guys. All right, you slabs of meat, you ham sandwiches.
It's Kubrick's universe. We just live in it.
We have taken very thorough precautions in this podcast against broadcasting anything which might only be attributed to human error.
Thank you for listening to the Stanley Kubrick Podcast. Come back soon.